Hey everybody, welcome to the R&R show. This is episode 93, and come on in, Ray and Chris. How the heck are you, friends?
Fantastic.
All
Great,
right.
Ruel. Happy to be back. How are
Yeah,
you?
it's been a while since Ray's been here. Oh, actually, just one episode, but it's feels like so much longer though, Ray. And
Does feel like a long time.
yeah, and Chris is super excited. He's
Well,
got in
I'm very excited. I'm celebrating.
the official
Wow.
celebration.
hmm
And we've got a great list today, folks. This is our top 12 must-have games. And if you don't know already, please click the links below for our extended edition, where we talk about more games that didn't make the list. And we do a bunch of fun little shenanigans before and after the show. So be sure to click that link and join us there. Now,
Those games that we talk about in there are even mustier.
yeah,
These are just must-have.
these are must-haves. We have mustier games, of course.
Needed that.
Spoken like a man with a twirly mustache there.
You know what, Ruel? Yes,
Right?
exactly. Spoken like a man with a twirly mustache.
Yeah.
I've decided to
Follow me up for
embrace
that.
my villain era.
Yes.
That's it. Welcome. I've turned heel, and I'm just gonna go for it.
Totally. Yeah, 100% heel. Now, this is a list that's been on the R&R channel show before. And you can find it on the YouTube channel as well. We've done this list several times, and we wanted to do it again because we wanted to include Ray and find out her must-have games. But why don't we talk a little bit, Chris, about how we approached it this time? How did we come up with the games that made this list?
Well, Ray, why don't you talk about it first?
Oh, yeah.
Just to
Good
put,
call.
since you're the newest, what was
Yeah.
what was
I'm
the
the new one to
agony
this-
that you had
this
to
saga.
go through?
Agony. yes.
This list was murder for me. I hated every second of
Because
coming
you
up
don't
with this
cull. You don't
stupid
cull at all.
list.
So just whittling this down to must
It
have
was
is
awful. It
Yeah.
was awful. I just need everyone to know that I personally had a really bad time working on this list. I just need everyone to know that. But so I went back, I watched all the previous iterations of this list, and I kind of felt like the through line that made the most sense for me, because like top 3 favorite games, I feel like that's kind of a different list.
Mhm.
Desert Island, you get into logistics too much. There's a lot to
Mhm.
that made me stressed out.
Yeah.
And then it was like must 3, and then it came down to top 3 must have, good God, games for anybody or for me. And I decided, we kind of discussed this as a group a little bit, and we landed on like the top 3 games that you
Yeah.
need to have in your collection, as in me, myself. Because
more
it's a
exciting
very
that way.
different list of what I would pick for myself versus like if you're starting out in board games, here are the 3 must-have games. I think that's kind of a different list. So the way I approach it is, if the Repo Man breaks into my house tomorrow and he takes all of my games except 3, what would be the 3 I'd be the happiest to have survived? I don't know, the great Repo
Great
Man
Reaping.
break-in of 24.
I really like that it's the Repo Man. You're telling us a lot about your fears of someone repossessing all of your stuff. It's
I
not
play a
thief,
lot of
it's
The
not a-
Sims,
it's not
and
a-
that's what happens
It's
if
a
you don't
repo
pay your
man.
bills. The Repo Man breaks in and steals your stuff. That's what I learned as a kid, and I have yet to learn anything to the contrary. So,
Okay. Well,
so that's how I define my list. So
That's
it
great
is
to
very personal and subjective to me. The 3 games that, if you were to take all my games away, I'd want to keep these 3 games. That is what I went with.
nice.
That's
Now-
a good one.
Yeah, I approached it a similar way, Ray, where these are the games that if someone, either the Board Game Repo Man or whoever, would come in and take away my games, these are the 3 that I would want, that I feel like are the must-haves. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, for me, yeah, because we kind of went more on the Desert Island route in the previous list, and so I
Mhm.
wanted to deviate from that as well. And I just wanted to think about games that I must have.
Mhm.
Like games that I really must have in my collection. And going through the collection, I was pretty, and I also like left out my favorite games. You know what I mean? Like Rising
Mhm.
Sun isn't on this list because like it's Rising Sun's too obvious. It's
Hmm.
always there. But I wanted to think about games that like I would be really sad if I looked at my shelf and they weren't there. You know,
Oh,
like
yeah.
so not necessarily worrying about balance. Like last time I really
Mhm.
worried about balance and having like a nice range of this is the only collection. I can't get more games ever. I only have these games, right?
Mhm.
Which I think is what Desert Island also implies.
Right.
Like you cannot acquire more. And this, I was like, no, these are games that like I just would be sad to not be able to play. my first one that we're going to talk about, because I'm starting off the list with number 12,
Yeah.
is one I haven't played in a very long time. And I might as well just jump into it since
Yeah.
I think I'm the last person describing her stuff. But even still, I would be very sad to not have it. And that is Spirit Island. Spirit Island, I probably haven't played in a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Like it's been a very long time since I've played Spirit Island, and it could just be that I'm getting the itch to play this. But it is one of those games that like I really, really enjoy having on my shelf. It always feels like a possibility, and then I think, oh no, I don't have the time for this. It always is something that like brings me joy to look at, and it always brings me joy to think about the depths of the systems involved in it. Like Spirit Island is one of those games. It's in the top. It's probably 11 on Board Game Geek right now. And it's one that I think is so wholly deserved to be there because of like the way the systems intertwined. And I also haven't played this game at its actual difficulty. I've always go so much time in between playing it that I don't play with the invaders, and then I always win very easily. And it feels like it is a sort of predetermined outcome that the win will happen. Because I think like you need the invaders to maybe up level the difficulty. But even still, even with that predetermined outcome, I think this really says to how enjoyable it is to engage with these mechanics and to engage with the asymmetry, because I really like tough punishing co-op games. And I still would always go back to the well of Spirit Island, even though I've only played it on easy mode and just like really enjoy the journey of playing it, which is I think pretty significant for me, since usually I like co-ops that are a lot more like cutthroat or punishing. And I hear that Spirit Island gets to be that when you add in the stuff that you're supposed to add. I just haven't done it because I always take so long in playing it. And so it's a weird thing to put in that like it's not one that I always reach for. It's not one that I've even played in a very long time, but it is one that like I am consistently actively excited to play regardless of if I have played it. And so it's a weird dichotomy there, but I just was thinking about it and scrolling through the list. I was like, you know what? I could get rid of a lot of these, but I would be sad if I didn't have Spirit Island. So that's why it makes the list.
Great choice. I haven't played this in a while either, Chris, and I'm in the same boat where I'm not getting rid of it. It's staying on my shelves because it's so good. And, you mentioned all the intertwining systems, and I feel like I have a few of these type of games on my shelves where I won't get rid of them because I love them so much, but, I'm never going to be playing at the most difficult setting because I need to relearn the game every single time. It's like, it's like that whole like, well, I love it so much, but I feel like I haven't fully experienced the game yet, or because I haven't gotten into that highest level. And I left off I've left off my all-time favorite game, Twilight Imperium, and because it's one of those games where first of all, it takes like all freaking day to play, but also it's one of those games where I need to relearn it every time. I mean, I have the basics, right? I know how the turn structures work. And
yeah, but there's so much little minutia in there.
Exactly. The minutia is like, so. And that's why I feel like Spirit Island is a great choice, because it's a fantastic game through and through. It's brilliant. And I think it's a great call and such a fantastic game. So number 12.
So robust.
It is. It is robust. And now the Invaders, that is... I thought that was part of the base game. I didn't know that.
It is part of the base game, but you can leave it out.
You can leave it out.
I think in the rule book, it's like, oh, don't play with the invaders first. And so like I just didn't. And then I was always like playing it with somebody new. Like, so I played this a bunch of times. But every time it's usually with somebody new, and I don't really play solo. So it's always like introducing somebody, or it's been enough time in between that I'm like, nah, we'll just leave it out.
Got it. Yeah.
I don't know. I this is a game that's always made me feel crazy. Because
you don't like it?
I wanted to like this game so much. I mean, to start out, I'm not a big co-op person, so it was not it was an uphill battle for me personally. I actually had the total opposite experience. I found it to be too punishing. I guess I never played the easy mode I never learned about, but I found it to be just kind of an endless game of whack-a-mole that made me very anxious. I definitely get the accolades and why it has them, but for me personally, this game just never quite never quite hit for me. But again, it's a longer co-op game, which is usually not a style that I
Yeah.
enjoy. Apparently there's a I don't remember what it's called, but there's like a Jaws of the Lion-esque, like a smaller,
Yes.
simpler
Horizons.
version of this
Spirit
that
Island.
everyone has. Yes, people said I should try that because my issues with the original Spirit Island, people say that version will like quell some of those issues that I had with it.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Ray, because I think that's a great point about these type of games where, it is a longer co-op game, as you mentioned, and having that Horizons experience, I think that's the one that people should give it a shot. Like, I mean, just to get, so you can play the game and really understand a good chunk of it without having to commit for, a couple of hours to something, right?
Right. So I'm looking to get that at some
Nice.
point.
Well, Ray, that's why you work at the op and not the co-op.
There we go.
Oh, folks, for more
That's John Tripp's joke.
for more witticisms like this, please check out the links below for the extended edition. Chris does another one that really gets me, just like it got me right now.
That is true.
Brilliant, Chris. Great choice for number 12, Spirit Island. Let's move right along to our combined list here. We're going to number 11. This is my choice, and this one's going to come as no surprise to anyone. And I seriously thought about not talking about this game because I've talked about it before on the channel, but darn it, it's a must-have game in my book. It is Baseball Highlights 2045, one of the ultimate deck builders. It is a sports-themed game that non-sports theme fans or non-sports fans will enjoy. And I know this for a fact because my buddy Daryl, and I've talked about Daryl before, he doesn't like baseball. He loves Baseball Highlights 2045. I will play this game every day of the week, plus twice on Sunday, folks. It is so good. You are managing a baseball team, and just like in baseball, you're trying to win the World Series. You're going to play 4 mini games. The mini games only consist of 6 cards. You can bang out a mini game in like 10 minutes, but then it's a best of 7 series, and whoever wins is the world champion, etc., etc. What makes this game so good for me is the gameplay is really sharp. You have your deck of cards, which is your team, and you play one of them out of your hand, and say, for instance, hey, my player's going to hit a single. And then your opponent is going to play a card that may say, hey, if your opponent plays a single, he's automatically out, or whatever. So it's a lot of like back and forth. It's almost like a dueling, battling game, but in a baseball theme. So yes, they'll teach you how to play the basic rules of baseball, but the deck building in this game is fantastic. It's a lot of hand management as well, trying to figure out what free agents you want to add to your deck, which are the more powerful cards, of course. Just like any good deck builder, you're going to level up your deck. You'll have those to play, and then as you move along in the game, you're going to see how powerful your deck is, but at the same time, your opponent is also leveling up. So you've got that battling, hey, I'm really strong now, but so are you. What will it come down to win? I love everything about this game. I think it's Mike Fitzgerald's masterpiece, and it's probably the best sports themed game I've ever played because it stays true to the game. He's actually done one for Football Highlights 2052. It really fell flat with me. It didn't have the streamlined gameplay of Baseball Highlights, and he's done one for basketball apparently that's sort of flown under the radar. And I haven't played it yet, but I've heard that one's really good, so I want to check that out. But for the purpose of this list, must-have games, folks, Baseball Highlights 2045. Please, if you haven't already, go pick up a copy and play it, or find someone to play it. It's wonderful.
I still haven't played it.
I love how much you love this game. I think I said that last time. I said I love how much you love this game. And I would love to play it with you sometime.
Maybe at Gen Con, if we can sneak away for like 20 minutes, we can play a couple of innings. It's so good. I think what really puts it over the top for me is, obviously I'm a baseball fan, but just that the gameplay, if you strip away the theme, it really is sort of like a dueling card game. Where like, hey, I'm going to do this, and then you may have the exact card that like negates that. And then if you play that one, then I may have a card that negates your negation, and it's a lot of back and forth like that, which I think is really neat. And of course, with the baseball theme, it's automatic for me. So I love this game. I always love it. There's a bunch of expansions. They just did a new Kickstarter with another expansion. So check that out, folks. That's our number 11, Baseball Highlights 2045. Okay. enough baseball talk. Let's go to
I
Ray.
never thought I would hear the day Ruel said that. Somebody clip that. Somebody
Someone
clip
clip
that and send it to Ruel every one of his podcasts. Every time he starts talking about the Dodgers, you just send it, just post it in chat. That's it.
Please do that, folks. Please do that. Ray, let's get away from the baseball talk with number 10 on the list.
Time for some spooky occult talk. My number 10. I want to start by saying, before I even talk about what my number 10 is, I had a total existential breakdown with this list in general, but specifically with this pick. I just really want to harp on how bad of a time I had. So the first thing I did when this list was pitched was I wrote down code names. That was like the first thing I did. I was like, oh, duh, code names. I love code names. It is my go-to like entry game for people. And then I sat, and the longer I like sat and thought about it, the less right that pick kind of felt for me. And if it was a list for anybody, like if we were doing this, you know, what's your top 10 starter games or whatever, it probably still would have been Codenames. But for me at this point in my life, I mean, I still think I put Codenames as my top party game when we did that list. But if we're talking about I can only have 3 games, I've played a lot of Codenames. I worked for Czech Games Edition for 2 years and probably played more Codenames than anybody needs to in their entire life. And so I sat there, I don't know, I had a drink, I stared at the wall, I called my therapist, and I finally decided it was okay to leave Codenames off this list. I decided, you know what, actually, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna be fine. So I swapped in my favorite Codenames killer that I think still has more interest and excitement for me right now than Codenames because I've played so much Codenames, and that is Phantom Inc. This is my favorite game when people say they love Codenames, and I go, well, have you tried this other game? So Phantom Inc. is a team-based word deduction game. Each team is going to have a spirit who is aware of a secret word. And the important thing here is both spirits on both teams have the same secret word. And then they each have a team of mediums who are trying to figure out that word that the spirits know. And to do that on their turn, when it's your team's turn, you and your other fellow mediums are going to pick one of the pre-written question cards that come with the game. And these range from really normal, like, you know, could this thing catch on fire? Or, you know, is this thing bigger than a house or whatever? To really weird things like, what if this thing were a movie, what movie would it be? There's a really fun range of pre-written questions that you ask your spirit, and then your spirit goes to physically write down the answer on a public pad of paper that both teams can see. So the team whose turn it is, they know the question that they've asked their spirit. The other team doesn't know the question, but they get to see the public writing of the answer. Once the mediums who ask the question think they know what the spirit is writing. So if the word was boat or something, and they said, if it were a movie, what movie would it be? And they start to write down like Titanic or something. If the mediums think they know that, oh, that's got to be Titanic, there's only so many words that start with those first 4 letters, they say silencio, and the spirit stops writing. So you're left with half a word on, like, so you're going to do this over and over again on each side. Nice. And so you have half the sheet of paper, you know the question, and you hopefully know the word. And then the other half, again, it's the questions for the same word, but you only get half a clue. But depending on the types of clues that you're writing down, it can help you narrow down. It's just a really fun deduction puzzle. It's unlike anything else I've seen from a word deduction game. That's one of my favorite genres, is party word games. I find this more approachable than Decrypto, and at this point in my life, more interesting than Codenames. And the other reason I wanted to put this on this list is they currently have a Kickstarter going for a standalone expansion that adds like a bajillion new cards and questions. That was the one thing that kind of tends to keep this off my list for me. So I'm like, oh, well, I've played this a bunch. I kind of know all the questions. They're adding in like 100 new fun, weird questions that I think will give this game a lot of replayability. I did try to think about replayability for this list. Like, if these are my only 3 games, you know, could I play these for a long time and be happy? And with that new Arcana expansion on Kickstarter, I haven't played it yet, but it looks like it's going to be more of something I already really enjoy. So yeah, that's Phantom Inc.
I'm looking at the Kickstarter right now, and apparently you can also get 2 disappearing ink pens.
Yeah, so you can reuse the same pad over and over again.
Yeah, I was
Nice.
hoping that it would just fade out for the teams, and you would have like
Remember it?
and you have to like
Yeah.
remember things as like they
That'd be
were
pretty
because
cool.
the shifting of memories. But it
That'd be
seems like
pretty
it's
cool.
just more like a reusable
Yeah.
like
Yeah, it is.
consideration rather than that.
Someone should
Yeah.
do that though. Someone run with that idea of like a
Hmm.
memory-based disappearing ink situation. That could be cool.
Right, as it
Yeah.
shifts away. You could do it with cards, like I guess letter cards, and then you could
Yeah.
flip them over slowly, like
Nice.
as time goes on, like if you had a timer going.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm glad you put this one on the list, right? It's different, right? It's I feel like it's almost code names, like next level code names or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's a, I code names plus, for
Yeah.
as it will, right? And
Totally.
yeah, and I again, these type of games aren't totally my jam, but I know that code names and this and Decrypto, I've always had fun playing these type of games, and
Mhm.
I really want to dive deep on the expansion because there's a bunch of stuff there. I was looking at the Kickstarter as well. There's a bunch of stuff there that looks really cool, and
Yeah.
as you talk about it, the replayability will increase tenfold, if not 100-fold,
Yeah,
with that.
for sure. For sure.
Okay,
Nice.
we got our first couple of picks down. Let's go to Richard, who's got our number 9. Richard, take it away now.
All right, I gotta say, this is a great start. Chris, nice choice. Spirit Island, one of the coolest, most innovative, and I think important cooperative games of all time. Not only for its subject matter, but for the way it redefines the core ideas of cooperative play. Everybody simultaneously figuring out the round structure as you go is so brilliant. It is, and just even the base box has so much gameplay in there. You will get a lifetime worth of fun out of that box. Excellent choice, Ruel. I can't blame you. Of course you're going to put baseball highlights on the list. You love baseball so much. And I have to say, I have actually played this game. And I thought it was a very, very smart design. Not enough to make me dig it because I just don't care about baseball. But I definitely enjoyed my brief time with it. And Ray, this is why I love having you on the list. I mean, you are coming up with stuff that never even occurred to me. I've heard about Phantom Inc. I know very little about it. So I cannot wait to hear your explanation of why it is a must-have. But now, let's move on to our number 9 on the list. And I gotta say, folks, this was hard. This is actually the 4th time that I have done a must-have desert island scenario style list on the channel. I did one back, I think, long time ago. What was it? In 2015, and then I did an update in 2020, and then I did another one in 2023 with Chris and Ruel. And every time I've always tried to put new games on the list rather than just repeating myself, because I think all of these lists stand. But it's never been harder than this because we're splitting a 12. That means I've only got 3. So effectively, what are my 3 desert island games? If I couldn't own any other games, couldn't play any other games, which is the way I approach this. Maybe you did it differently. I don't know. My other rule is I say I can't have expansions, because if I have expansions, then this gets much easier. I'll just pick the game that has the most content, right? So with my desert island games without expansion, and I can only have 3 of them, that means each one of these games has to do double duty. It has to tick multiple boxes to make it on this list. And after much consideration, I am prepared to announce our group number 9 for the list is Marrakesh. And this is one of designer Stefan Feld's newest, most recent games. And Stefan Feld, of course, is my favorite board game designer of all time. And there are 2 things that Marrakesh does that put this on the list. One, I had to have a game that is big and crunchy and deep and complex and provides just endless replayability just with what comes in the core box, and Marrakesh ticks that box for me. This is like over a half dozen games glommed into one board, all held together by the Keshi Tower, which is the other big thing this does. It provides some really fun, novel thing, not for me. I mean, I love the Kesh Tower, don't get me wrong, once it works. Actually, when I originally did my run through for Marrakesh, I actually said it was my most disappointing game of the year because my copy of the game had a cube tower that just fundamentally did not hold on to cubes, or Keshis they're called, at all, and it was hugely disappointing. But eventually, when I got my Essential Edition later on, and then that tower worked great, I was like, yes. But anyway, what's so big about the tower? It's my wife. I knew of these 3 games that I'm going to put on this list. One of them had to be for her. And at this point, I would say Marrakesh is Jen's favorite of all the Feld games. And we have played every single one of them in history and love them all to pieces in different ways, or almost all of them, not all of them. But anyway, Jen adores this game on such a deep level because it is so deep and rich and allows you to pursue radically different things every time you play. And with a functioning cube tower, it is endlessly surprising and engaging. And yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. One of Feld's all-time best. I know others have said it is literally Feld's best design of all time. It's my wife's favorite. I dig it too. It's number 9 on our combined list. The Great Marrakesh. Okay, back to you, gang.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Yes, of course, a Stefan Feld game was going to be on this list. Much like, yes, you were going to have baseball highlights on the list, you are definitely going to have a Feld game. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the previous episodes where we did this list, check it out here on the channel because Richard has another Feld game that was near and dear to my heart. But Marrakesh, I haven't played it yet, so I'm not familiar with it. I am familiar with Feld's games. I do like them. Not all of them hit with me, but Marrakesh I'd like to give a shot because I've heard nothing but good things about it.
I just want to congratulate Richard on his nuptials with the Tower of Marrakesh. I think we all heard it here. It's really a beautiful moment that he felt comfortable sharing with all of us. You know what's great about this tower? It's my wife.
It's my wife.
And so I don't know how.
That is literally what he said.
So I just want to really like heartfelt congratulations to Richard. So happy for you two. Jen, I'm sorry if something's happened or if you've turned into a tower of Marrakesh.
Oh, no.
I think there are 2 options here. But that's what I got from that Mick.
Incredible.
Oh my goodness, I love the show, folks. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Chris, for the insight. Let's move along. And Chris, you are going to bring us our next game, number 8 on the list.
My next game, which I have brought with me.
Oh.
My next game, it is in my hand, just off frame. It is a game that I have fallen in love with, like absolutely fallen in love with. I first heard about it because it is in the World Series of Board Gaming lineup, and I'm so happy it was in there. I'm so happy that I'm involved in that. Specifically for this game, it is Raw. 25th Century has done such an incredible job with this edition. That's not the 25th Century one that you see up above, but it is the an older game for Raw. It feels like so many people are talking about Raw lately too. There's Shut Up and Sit Down was talking about Raw recently. No Pun Included was talking about Raw, and more importantly, the R&R show is talking about Raw. The most important, it is just it's blown me away in terms of how much of a masterpiece this is. And I was going back through the 2023 footage of WSBG and like kind of clipping and trying to do like a highlights reel. So I started off with Raw, and I was just like so enraptured by the strategic choices that are there. It is such an awesome balance of like when to push or when to pull, right? Like when to push people in, when to call the bid, like when to push your luck a little bit more. Can you go on a run of drawing tiles? Will somebody let you go on that run, or will they force you to call Raw? And then will you hold out taking those pieces or not? It's like an incredibly dynamic game that just has hit so well with me. And it is one of those things that like I am so surprised by how much I continue to enjoy this game, and it's one that I would be very, very sad if I did not have on my shelf. I think the 25th Century Edition is such a gorgeous production. Like, it really shows you what you can do with revamping a title like what a great like new art direction can do and can revitalize, and how they can make it so user friendly as well, with like the player boards that have all the scoring conditions on them. It's really really good. I highly recommend, and both the retail or the deluxe editions are good choices. I feel
Yeah.
it's one of those things where like I think it might even be coming back for another Kickstarter, and I don't know if I'm gonna just get the deluxe because I like it so much.
Yeah.
But it'll depend, if it depends on the, because I've used this copy a lot because I take it with me to run any like little WSBG events too. If I'm running like a little mini tournament, I'll just take all my copies of all the games. And so like I need to do a full examination of the tiles and see like how much people's finger oils have rubbed them off. I think retail is just like such a good value, and the tiles are so thick and satisfying. And as an auction game, it is just it is phenomenal. And so yeah, Raw had to be on the list. It had to be.
Yeah.
And it's clear that it made the cut for my travels. That the only reason that Spirit Island isn't with me is, one, for time, and two, because a friend is borrowing it. But they're not keeping it. Sometimes I let friends borrow games, and then
that
I'm like,
man's not the board game repo man in disguise. Are you sure? How well do you know this friend?
I hope
Is
not.
he gonna bring it back?
Cassie, please, no! Oh, they're breaking in right now. They're breaking. Oh God! Well, keep tightly tucked under my pillow. Yeah, I'm very happy and very excited to play it. That's our number 8.
Great call. There was no way there was not going to be a Knizia on the list, of course. And this is, like you said, it's a masterpiece. And for the longest time, I thought the best auction game was actually a game called QE. I felt like that was like the best pure auction game. But the more, it's a great game. But the one I'd rather play is Raw. It adds that bit of set collection, push your luck element to it. It's so good. I'm so glad that you picked it, Chris. You know how much we are fellow Dr. K fans, as we call it. And I'm sort of bummed the video. Yeah, this is an older version, but what's great about this game is no matter what version you have, it's the gameplay is so strong, and it's been around for 20 years. It's not going anywhere. So no matter what version you play, you're gonna have a wonderful time with it. So good.
Yeah, it's one of those games that like I think I really do think that like my exposure to it in the World Series has really helped it skyrocket because I've seen its potential, right? Like when you watch really good players play a game and you see the moves that they're making, and you're like, oh, this, like, you understand the game so much more than if you're just learning it and everybody's learning it for the first time, right? And making those discoveries. And I like making those discoveries. I definitely had some of those discoveries as like a friend of mine glommed onto it and just started hammering Raw, and I was like, you're not allowed to do that. You're supposed to wait for me to fill up the entire row and then take it with my highest number. What are you doing? But just seeing like the dynamic of strategy with such a simple rule set is phenomenal. Mind-blowing to me. So.
I love that it seems like a little thing, but just the way you bid, there's only a limited amount of numbers that you can bid with, and when you bid, it goes like to the open market, so to speak, right? And you lose that, but it goes, someone else can pick that up. I love that, rather than QE we're just talking about, that goes the totally opposite way. You could bid whatever the heck you want, right? But this gives you that really tight, narrow, like, this is what you bid in this game and in this round. And oh, it's so good. I want to play it now. Now, I should ask this, and I'm wondering how, if Rich, I'm sure he'll talk about, but I have not played this at 2-player. Have you, Chris? And does it work?
Yeah, it's okay. It's not the best. It's better with more people.
Yeah.
2-player, it's not as great as it could be, but it's fine. Like it's okay. If you really wanted to play it at 2-player, you can. But I 3 and up is what I enjoy.
Yeah, and then for the 2-player, are there any rules tweaks or anything, or is it you just play it as is?
Not really. You kind of just play it as is.
Oh, okay.
You might remove some raw tiles, maybe.
Oh yeah,
but I don't even think you do that.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, folks, that's our number 8, Raw. Great choice, Chris. Let's move on to our number 7, which is going to be my choice. And surprise, we've got another Knizia on the list. This is my all-time favorite game from the Good Doctor. This is a game called Samurai. Now, Samurai is a tile laying game. It also has area control, which are two of my favorite mechanisms. And this game it's in your face. It is, but it's an abstract at its heart, right? You're just surrounding different tiles here, trying to get the different pieces and trying to get the majority in 3 different areas. So you have military, farming, and I believe religion. And those are represented by different pieces. This is the OG version that Richard has here. This is also the version that I have from Rio Grande Games. They have another Fantasy Flight version, which I have never played, but it's basically the same thing, just with different types of minis and whatnot. On your turn, you have a couple of tiles behind your screen. You're going to choose one of those and place it anywhere on the board. And then one of those, either religion, farming, or military pieces, you're going to be surrounding. When they are completely surrounded, you're going to pause right there and count up who has the most influence. They have different numbers. Whoever has the most will take it into their supply behind the screen, and rinse and repeat until all the tiles have been out, or a majority of the pieces have been taken. I think it's 2 need to be completely off the board, like, say, for instance, religion and farming or whatever. Once those are done, you're going to reveal how many everyone's collected, and then whoever's has the most majority of each one will win the game. I love, again, just like we were just talking about Raw, how simple the rule set is. And this is a huge feature of Knizia's games. Low rules overhead, and the strategy, the complexity comes through in the gameplay. That's what I'll always appreciate about his games, and that's why Samurai I love so much. It's the first Knizia I've ever played, and maybe that has just really, I remember it's the first time I played it, and I just had to get a copy of the game. This was years ago when I first got into the hobby. And when I finally tracked it down, it was out of print. I finally tracked it down, and I was so excited, and I played it numerous times since then at all player counts. For the 2-player game, all you do is shrink the map. You just take away a couple of the islands or whatever. For a 4-player game, you just add, and it's really straightforward, but the gameplay is so good. It's tiles, tile lane, area control. That's it. It's a fantastic game. My favorite Knizia of all time. That's why it's our number 7 on the list of must-have games.
Yeah, I've only played this at 2 players, but I like the tactical element to it. A buddy of mine has a copy. I play it with him.
Yeah,
but
I've never played this game.
Oh no!
No,
another one.
I don't know. I don't know if maybe if it just, like, you said it's an older Knizia title. Maybe I just, like, missed it by the time I got into the hobby.
Yeah,
but it sounds great.
Yeah, it's another one of those. Hey, this was released back in 1999, and it's gone through, I think, 2 different versions, and I feel like this is one that, like, a 25th Century may take on and deluxeify it. I would buy it in a heartbeat. It is fantastic.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah. You know what I really love about this one, Ray, is, and Chris and everyone watching, is it just has that feeling of a classic game, right? Tile lane, really straightforward, but it has just enough tweaks to, like, make you come back. Because there's, like, certain tiles that give you, like, a special ability, and, you know, when that comes out, you'll be able to play that. And everyone has the exact same tiles, but because of the way you draw tiles, you're just going to draw randomly 5, and you put it in behind your screen. You're going to play one of those at a time, and so they don't all come out at the same time, right? And it's so good. I think it's one of those games that, again, it's been around for 20 years, but it's been, like, I don't know, overlooked for a lot of those years. I feel, for some reason or another.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I feel like a lot of Knizia titles, it feels like they are always out of print, even though they are modern classics. And I think, like, Tigris and Euphrates is, like, in between print. I think that's just, like, likely due to, like, licensing and whatever. It drops out or it doesn't, and then it will come out with another one. So I think for those of you who are always scared, just know they will come back. If it's a Knizia title and it's a classic, it will come back. I brought, like, Tigris and Euphrates with me because my buddy Pat wanted to try it, and that's currently out of print, but, like, it'll come back. It's beloved enough that it'll come back. Don't spend $1,000 on a used copy.
Oh my god!
Right? Yeah,
it can get insane in between printing.
Seriously, and they I think it was All Play that just re-released Through the Desert, another classic that had been out of print for a while, but sure enough, it came back. Yeah. So, all right, so back to back Knizias. Let's move on to our number 6. Ray, you've got the choice.
All right, so this game that I believe I talked about previously in my top engine builders list, so I won't yap about it for too long, but I really love this game. My number 6 is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition.
Nice.
I feel like Terraforming Mars is just, like, one of those classic must-have games. I personally have discussed this on the channel before. I personally really prefer Ares Expedition to the original Terraforming Mars. I won't go into a ton of detail on Terraforming Mars because everybody knows about it. But if you don't, it's basically like a Tableau engine builder where you are trying to hit certain parameters to terraform Mars, and you're trying to be the best space capitalists that you can in the process. I love Ares Expedition because it gets rid of the area control, which I did like, but I never felt enough in the original Terraforming Mars to really justify its existence. It gets rid of the awards, and it gets rid of a couple of other things that I know a lot of people still like the OG, and that's fine. Other things that I personally would consider bloat in the original Terraforming Mars, trims it down. It adds simultaneous actions, which I adore. And yeah, this made my list for two primary reasons. One, it is my partner's favorite game, loves this game very, very much. And it's got an absolute bajillion amount of cards. So that replayability, which I did try to factor into this, is really present in this game. And with all the different corporations and companies that you can play as, I just find that even as much as I've played this game a ton, I still find that the experience feels different and unique every time because there's so many cards, there's so many arguably broken unique interactions with certain cards that I just find this to just be that sweet spot for me of set collection and engine building. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It plays really well with new people. And I don't have anything new to say about this game I haven't said before. I just really, really love it. I get it to the table all the time, and I have yet to get bored of it. So I'd be really upset if I couldn't have this in my collection anymore.
Great choice, Ray. I love this game as well. And this is the one where if I was going to play Terraform Mars, this is the one that's going to get to the table. And, you talk about that huge deck of cards. Again, that was a feature in the original game, and they kept that for this version, which I love. You still have, there's going to be a ton of choices you can make, tons of things to do. And then the second thing you said was the simultaneous actions. Like, there's just the way the action selection, that's something new here, which is more like a Race for the Galaxy type thing. And I thought it totally improved the game. I love that about this, and it's the one I would choose to, whether new or veteran gamers. I feel like this is sort of replaced the OG Terraforming Mars.
Yeah.
I really
and
love
I
this
know
one.
some people will be upset by that, and that's fine. You're allowed to like original Terraforming Mars.
Yep.
I just find this so much easier to get to the table. And I just vastly prefer it to the original. So yeah.
Now, have you played the Crisis co-op expansion?
I have not.
That's the only one I haven't played. I played all the other like little
same.
modules in it.
Yeah. The co-op has little appeal for me, so I haven't played
That's
it.
right.
Well, I just didn't know. I didn't know if that was maybe an exception because you like the game so much. If you would make that exception,
Maybe I would like it. I haven't tried it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Nice. Okay, great choice. Let's move on to number 5, which Richard has for us right now.
Okay, Chris, you continue to be my preferred life partner. Raw is my personal highest ranked favorite Knizia game of all time. I do think it's brilliant. And that new 25th century, 25th anniversary edition, is just gorgeous. I love it to pieces. I actually seriously considered it for my list too. It didn't make it, although folks, mentioning it now, don't forget, if you want more must-have games, remember, this is just the main R&R show. There is an extended version of the R&R show where we catch up with Ray and find out what's been going on with her. And I'm so glad, Ray, I know you're under a lot of pressure. You're able to make time for us today with some great options. But anyway, though, and the other thing in the extended edition, of course, is we will talk about more must-have games. I had 10 games. I actually had to whittle down to 3 to get on this list today. Was Raw one of them? Maybe. So you'll have to check out the extended. Links down in the show notes. Folks, you can just jump over to that extended right now. Keep watching from where we are right now. And then finish out with a bunch of extra games. But anyway, so Raw, brilliant. Ruel, Samurai, also a brilliant game. Wasn't a keeper for me. A bit too confrontational at the end of the day. And in all honesty, Ruel, have you played Rebirth yet? Have you? It might make you rethink your love of Samurai, quite frankly. And then Ray, Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition, another one I thought long and hard about as well. As far as I'm concerned, completely obliterates the original Terraforming Mars. Combining Race for the Galaxy with Terraforming Mars becomes, greater than the sum of its parts. An excellent choice, I have to say. And now, my number 5 on our combined list. Once again, I had to try to tick 2 boxes, and I'm pretty happy. There were a bunch of games I had in my queue to fill this slot. Which one did I go with? It was Tiny Towns. And this is not the first time I've talked about Tiny Towns on the show, and I know I'm not all alone in my love for this game. But here's the 2 things Tiny Towns does. Actually, 3 maybe even. One, as a counterpoint to my previous entry, Marrakesh, big, heavy, complex, bombastic, sprawling game, I needed to have something that was rich and fun and infinitely replayable with a tiny, tiny footprint and a tiny, tiny playtime. And Tiny Tiny Towns delivers on both of those things. I absolutely adore this game. I've played it so much. And while, it's got a lot of great expansion content, just even the base game does everything I need it to do. Another thing, I really wanted to have a tile layer on the list. I love tiling, one of my favorite mechanisms. And while this, strictly speaking, isn't a tile layer, it's kind of a tile builder. You have a 4x4 grid. Players are taking turns picking cubes to put on the grid to try to build the ideal tiles they're going for, but you have to anticipate what your opponent is going to do too and be ready for however they're going to make your tiny town expand, whether you like it or not. And it's absolutely brilliant. I could play this game 7 days to Sunday. Oh, another great thing it does, goes up to 6 players. And it's a phenomenal gateway game too. So this game serves triple duty. It does so much for me. Scratches an itch I want. Gives me and Jen a fast game to play. It's also an amazing solo game. And no matter the player count. Oh, also another thing doesn't get enough credit for. It has 2 different modes that let you play in radically different ways. One of them, if you're looking for it, can be quite cutthroat if you're playing at a lower player count and you're making moves specifically to stuff your opponent. And honestly, I enjoy that also, which I know Ray does as well. I remember her talking about this, and she was surprised because at her house this is a knives out kind of game, and it can be at my house too, and I still find myself enjoying it. This is I think my number 31 highest ranked game of all time, and because I knew I had to have a fast, efficient, tiny footprint, high player count game that I could play with anyone, anywhere, anytime, Tiny Towns makes the list. Okay, back to y'all.
Yeah, I love Tiny Towns. This has been a mainstay in my collection, and I've played a ton. I played, I think, 1 or 2 of the expansions that adds a new currency, like the gold or whatever.
I love that. That's a good expansion.
It's terrific.
I think that's almost a necessary expansion. Yeah, it's really good.
I need to play it more. I've only played it a handful of times, but I feel Ray, it's probably one of those I'm going to continue to add it whenever I play it. I remember the hype around this game when I went to Dice Tower West a few years ago. It just released, and people were going crazy over it. And I was like, what, really? Tiny Towns? And once I played, I realized, okay, yeah, this is such a smart game. It's almost now Richard was talking about a tile layer. I felt like it was more like a roll and write, but in board game form, where it's bingo style, right? Everyone, hey, you get a wheat, and then everyone has to put a wheat, but you can do it different ways, right? Okay, now everyone gets a wood or whatever. So I really, really love Tiny Towns. I'm glad it's here. I know how much Richard loves this, and I love this game as well.
Yeah, no, I love this game so much. Richard is right that this game is very aggressive in my household, but that's well, I love it for that. But it's just funny every time I talk to someone about it, they're like, it's this really pleasant, relaxing spatial game. I'm like, what game are you talking about? But I love it for that. So I'm glad we're on the same page at the end of the day in that we love Tiny Towns.
Yes.
Yeah, I decidedly dislike the version where you don't call out the tiles, you just flip them up and they're sort of random.
I agree.
That is a horrible way to play. You have to play it where I'm like, oh, you don't need yellow.
Hey,
exactly.
That is so core to it for me. Is the calling out what people don't want and then learning to adapt to it. You can't be too set in your strategy in this game, and that's what I love is that It's got very simple player interaction, but it's so impactful in your overall strategies. You have to learn to adapt to what other people are sending you.
Oh, totally. And that way of flipping the cards, that's used for the solo mode as well. And I think it's fine for the solo, but yeah, when I play with one or whoever many players I play, I want to play it the original way, the way where I can pick the ones that you don't need. You know, it's so good. Richard also real quick mentioned Rebirth. Richard, I have played Rebirth. I love it. It's a Knizia game that just launched on Kickstarter. They just funded. It's fantastic. Yeah, it is so good. But I don't know. I really liked it, but I need to play it more. I feel like Samurai, at least for me, it's still the one for me. But Rebirth is fantastic. So check that one out as well, folks. Maybe next time we'll make the must-have list. We'll see. We're getting to our top 4 now. Chris, it's back to you.
Well, here's another one that I have on the shelf behind me.
All right.
It is. I talked about it today in my Monday crowdfunding countdown. For anybody who watched that on my channel, I said, "Here's the spoiler. This is the first game that went into my bag. This was the hit of the summer last summer, and I was like, I gotta bring it with me. This is a game. It's in my top 10, so I did have to put something that's in my top 10, but it's because I just adore this game so much, and it is Avalon, the best social deduction game that exists. I don't care who you are or what you say. This is the one. And we've all agreed, because I'm going to keep talking so that no one can disagree. It's Avalon. You can see I'm showing a video there of the differences between the two. There's a big box, and there was like the Resistance Avalon box. I still think the Resistance Avalon is probably the best way to go, because you don't really need all the characters unless you are like a big fan. But like, I love playing just base Avalon all the time, and it just, what I love about Avalon, the number one thing that I love about Avalon is that it is a social deduction, very similar to Werewolf, where nobody gets eliminated, and that you have complete player agency throughout the game. Unlike Secret Hitler, or Feed the Kraken, you have actual player agency, and unlike Werewolf or Mafia, you never get eliminated, you never get voted out. You're going on these quests, and you want these quests to succeed or fail. I also see that's what Blood on the Clock Tower does well, in that the ghosts are still able to participate and have a voice, and be able to talk. But I just think Avalon, Blood on the Clock Tower, is too complicated to get the majority of normies involved, let's say. And like, Avalon is one that just like, I have played so many times. I've had some of my favorite game nights with it, just a bunch of people laughing and backstabbing each other. And it's just such a solid, simple structure that even with the extra rolls, I tend to play vanilla, and I love playing vanilla. And I think that's and I didn't realize that was a theme between this and Spirit Island, of the core mechanics being so sound that it's just super duper fun. I would be so sad if I never got to play Avalon again. And so it has to be a must have. It was the number one thing I had to bring. It was the thing that resonated with my cast last summer, and for sure, just love it. Had to put it in.
Nice. I knew this game was going to be on the list, Chris. I know how much you love it, and having done the show with you for a while now, and knowing your love of this game, I need to play this game. It's on the top of my must play. I've never played. I've played.
Oh man,
we'll play.
Yeah,
we'll play.
I really, again, deduction games aren't really my jam, but it just seems like this is the one, for me at least.
We should get a bunch of people. It requires 5 to play. We should get 7. We should get 7 people, and we should have an R&R Avalon show.
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
I'd love that.
Let's make that happen. We could totally make that happen. Yeah.
We'll just add 4 people. We just need 7. That's all we need. Seven's a good number for Avalon.
We could. No. What's the minimum? Is it 4 or 5?
Minimum's 5. Maximum's 10.
Okay.
7 is a good spot.
7 is a good. Between 7 and 9 is the ideal, I think, with Avalon. 10 is still good, and then it's 6, and then it's 5.
Okay.
But I've also played a bunch of 5-player games that I really enjoy.
Okay.
But it's also going to be madness on Zoom with everybody shouting over each other. It's going to be a horrible thing to listen to. I've actually filmed two games of Avalon that I played with my friends that I wanted to put on Room and Board, and it just is I couldn't release them because they were too nuts.
It's hard to
really?
It's hard to social deduction games are really hard to translate into a video form. It's
Yeah.
really difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love Avalon. I love social deduction games in general, and Ruel, I would love to play this with you all. I get to just I get very aggressive during these games.
Oh,
and I think
okay.
it'd be really fun to like see everyone's personality. Like everyone has.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like why some people don't like deduction games, right? It's so dependent on who you're playing with and matching play styles. But I think it'd be really fun to play with y'all. I will say, best social deduction game.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to do a list.
Look at that.
We'll have to do a list.
You would say, we heard it here first. Clip that. Ray said, I would say best social deduction game. End quote.
End quote.
Avalon, it's been official. We don't need to add the punctuation there. Just cut it before the punctuation.
I love it. Just that one little clip. We need to play this. I really want to give this a shot. I cannot wait.
Absolutely.
So good. Okay. Number 3, I've got it here, and this is not a social deduction game. This is one of my favorite mechanisms, if not my favorite mechanism, worker placement. And I feel this game just captures it's a perfect blend of mechanism and theme, and it's our number 3 game. It is Viticulture Essential Edition, one of my all-time favorite games, and I just feel like I said, it captures workers, the mechanism and the gameplay perfectly, because as you you're literally sending out your little workers into your vineyard, and they are doing things like gathering the grapes, stomping on those grapes, and eventually making wine and selling them to the customers. I love that. It's one of those games where, hey, it may it may not be your theme, but just like baseball, it may not be your theme, but the mechanisms just are so well done, and it's really, again, I would call it like a medium weight type game, maybe light, medium, or whatever. But just knowing how, like, hey, I just need to send my worker here to get the grapes, or I need to send my worker here to fulfill an order. It's really easy to grasp, and I always appreciate that about Viticulture. Now, I shall say this. If you're a veteran gamer, if you still haven't played Viticulture, I would highly recommend getting this with the expansion, Tuscany, because it really levels up the game. And I don't know. I was really, when we were coming up with this list, I was sort of torn. I'm like, do I just stick with the base game, which I love? I love the base game, but when I play it, I always play it with Tuscany because it does add a couple of modules. It actually adds almost like a little area control type, the area majority thing on a little map, and it just adds more cards and whatnot. But then I thought about it. I'm like, what am I try not to overthink this, Ruel. It's a fantastic game, and it's been on the BGG top 100 or top 50 list for years and years, for good reason, because it plays so smoothly. And this is a game that's not only a must-have, but it's on the top of my bucket list of games I want to play at a winery. Michelle and I, we go wine tasting occasionally, and this is the one game we always say we got to bring it here, but then we forget. We have our glass of wine. It's like, next time we'll do it. But this is a fantastic game, and that's why it's our number 3 on the combined list of must-have games, Viticulture Essential Edition.
I mean, this is a great pick. I hemmed and hawed on putting this on the list a bunch, and then I was like, I think Ruel's gonna put it on there, so it's covered. This is one of my favorite games of all time. This is like top 5 games for me. No, I love Viticulture. But moving past that, what is happening with Richard in this video? Is he doing some sort of gag with the pronunciation of Pinot? Because I keep seeing him like,
what was it? Yeah,
what was that? Because we can't hear the audio. I just kept seeing him pull over like a cue card that like spelled out P no and like P-E-N-O.
Yeah,
I saw that too. Go back and watch this video because I'm like, what is that the gag? Is the gag that it's P no?
I'm curious. Like, what the heck? We're gonna have to watch that video and see what happened. That is hilarious. P no,
it's killing me.
Like, was he saying a P not? Maybe that's the only thing I can think of.
I don't know. It's a mystery. You'll have to go find out.
We'll have to find out. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great pick, Ruel.
Thanks. I love this game so much. Also, just a little like one of those games where you have that experience like when you get into the hobby. And then you play some games, you're excited, and then there's just certain games that you play, at least for me, I can think of 2 of them, that really is like, oh my gosh, board gaming is amazing. Like, I had those experiences early. I was, this is so much fun, I love more on board gaming. But when I played Blood Rage, and then when I played Viticulture, those 2 mind-blowing, like, oh my goodness, this is awesome, and it really took me to the next level. Those two games in particular, just I have those core memories of when I got into the hobby, and that's forever embedded in me.
Same.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a good pick, but I also think I had heard that you can't play it without Tuscany. You can't play without Tuscany. I've only played it. I'd only played it with Tuscany, and then somebody was like, "Do you want to play base Viticulture?" I was like, "Man, you can't play without Tuscany." And then I played base Viticulture, and I was like, "Oh wait, this is actually really good."
Base
Yeah.
Viticulture's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But like, I feel like that. So like, shout out to base Viticulture. It is a solid game that I would happily play, and like I enjoyed Tuscany as well. But I was like, I played it with. I didn't miss as much as I was expecting to miss by all the sort of fervor when people talk about it. So that's the one thing I just wanted to highlight in the Viticulture must-have edition number 3.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I have Tuscany and I 50-50 whether or not I play with it. Because sometimes I'm just like, I just don't I want to just play base Viticulture. I think it holds up perfectly fine without Tuscany.
Yeah.
Tuscany is great, but Tuscany would not make my list of like must-have expansions. I think base Viticulture still gives you the same core gameplay loop. It's still a very satisfying start to finish game. Those extra things are nice to have, but I wouldn't call them necessary personally.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I play a bunch of Viticulture online on BGA Board Game Arena, and that's just base Viticulture.
And that's vanilla.
It's fun. Yeah. Cool. All right, Ray, what do we got for number 2 today?
All right, my number 2 is the Seven Wonders Duel. Again, another existential crisis of whether or not to put Duel or the original on this list, because the original Seven Wonders is just very nostalgic for me. I love that game. Do I think there are probably better card drafting games at this point in time? Probably, but I love Seven Wonders very, very much. I decided to go with Duel because I feel like Seven Wonders Duel feels more different every time I play it than original Seven Wonders. And I think that's primarily because of those 3 variant win conditions. Where Seven Wonders base, I love, but you are kind of doing the same thing every time. And there's less predictability because you're doing pick and pass drafting as opposed to this pyramid drafting that you're doing in Seven Wonders Duels. It feels like you have a little bit more control and it's a little bit more aggressive, which I like. There's more direct player interaction. So just briefly, if you're unfamiliar, Seven Wonders Duel is the 2-player version of Seven Wonders. It keeps the spirit of Seven Wonders, but it really does mechanically function quite differently. Again, you're not doing pick and pass drafting. You're doing like an open pyramid style draft where you're drafting from the bottom and working your way up. And your economies are much more tied together between the 2 opponents. If you have a lot of one resource, that resource becomes very expensive for the other person. And I just really love that. And as I mentioned, there are 3 paths to victory in this game, where in regular Seven Wonders, it's just points. In Seven Wonders Duel, it can be regular points, but it can also be military. There's like a tug of war mechanic in military. There's also a bit of set collection in science, and you can win via those routes in addition to or instead of regular points. And this is my most played 2-player game. I play this with my partner endlessly. I will always, if you suggest Seven Wonders Duel, I'm always down to play it. It just feels so different and satisfying every time. That really interwoven economy between the 2 players. Very satisfying. And I'm dying, but I like Seven Wonders Duel. That's the point I'm making. I love this game.
This is a brilliant game. I love this one as well, Ray. And I think I enjoyed Seven Wonders, but I think we had this conversation recently where Seven Wonders, it's a terrific game, but I don't feel like it's a gateway game. It's a gateway plus, but everyone talks about it as a gateway. I feel like it's a gateway plus, but I also agree that Seven Wonders Duel is a superior game. And if anything, it's a lot easier for me to understand the science scoring in Seven Wonders Duel rather than having to do calculus to figure out the original.
It's just set collection. It's not. It's not. Exponential values or whatever.
Right. And I do love I'm glad you pointed this out, Ray, just the style of drafting, having those cards in that pyramid and then the little funky shape in the second and third rounds. I really prefer that over just, pick and pass. It's funny. It's just one little change, but it makes all the difference in the world, I feel like. It's fantastic.
Are you ready for the hottest take?
We want it. Yes, hottest take.
I swear to God, you say you don't like this game, I'm going to never be friends with you again.
Two players, Seven Wonders. The variant is better than this game.
Oh, we've had this conversation.
yeah,
I've never
that's-
played that, and
Richard feels the
have
same way.
Immense doubt that is true.
It is
Yeah.
true.
I do not believe you.
It is for sure true. Seven Wonders Duel is. I am excited with my copy of Seven Wonders Duel to get it out of my collection. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Hot takes.
On my next call. It's out the door.
2-player Seven Wonders, is it? But it doesn't have the variable. You're just picking and passing the same hand back and forth?
Fine.
Yeah. It's a dummy player, right?
It's a dummy player. There's a dummy player.
I hate dummy players. I hate them.
Well, it sounds like I'm sitting with 2 dummy players right now. because Seven Wonders Duel is just okay. You've heard it here first. It is the most overhyped game in board game history.
Wow.
It's like number 22 or something on Board Game Geek. What is it on Board Game Geek? Let's look it up right now.
Yeah, it's definitely top 25. I know that for a fact. That is because
fantastic.
it's so good.
It's
19.
It's literally so good.
Yeah, 19.
It's overall ranked 19, strategy 22. So when you get into the strategy, it goes down.
Yeah, it's super low on strategy. Oh my god. Folks, for more hot takes like this, be sure to watch the extended edition of the show. And why don't we move on to our number 1 on the list? Richard's got it. Richard, what is number 1?
All right, coming down to the wire. And Chris, sadly, we must divert paths now. I thought we were going to be in it to the end, and Avalon is certainly brilliant, just not the kind of game I'm looking for. Social party, hidden, role type stuff. It's a great example of the form, just not my bag. But yeah, I would happily play it with you sometime. But yeah, my God, only 3 games? Not for me. But, Ruel, you came closest with Viticulture Essential Edition. But again, I'd have to say the nay. If I could bring along expansions, which means if I could have Viticulture plus Viticulture Worlds, which is one of, to my way of thinking, the most impressive conversion of a competitive game into a co-op game the industry has ever seen, then yeah, Viticulture probably would have made my short list also. But, the standard game is a bit too swingy to be a good competitive game for my taste. And then Ray, Seven Wonders Duel, yeah, I know you're not alone in this. And some people would say, what? Such a simple little thing and only for 2 players? Yeah, totally. And I would consider it too if it weren't the unnecessarily mean, proactively cutthroat instead of, the kind of cutthroatness that I was able to find peace with in tiny towns. I have to admit, I'm really looking forward to the Lord of the Rings version that's coming later this year. My fingers are crossed that, Bowser, rethinks his war tracks so that I'm not literally just burning your stuff to the ground. But still, it makes sense. I'm not surprised. I think I'll allow it. It's a good number 2. Just not for me personally. But what is our combined number 1? Chris, hopefully I will win you back. Because after thinking about long and hard, I had to go with Aeon's End, the Legacy of Gravehold. And what does this one do? Oh, what does this do? It is a cooperative game. I had to have a co-op game in my top 3 must-haves of all time. It is a card game, a deck builder, more to the point. And I love big, elaborate card games. Neither of my other ones were, so I really needed to have. I love shuffling. Although, ironically, oh my gosh, I just said that out loud. The most, unique thing about Aeon's End is you never shuffle. So, I guess I won't be shuffling. Well, put that aside, it's still another one of the greatest cooperative games of all time. So influential. And another thing this thing does is, one of my 3 games had to be a big box full of content. And there has never been a bigger, deck builder box. I mean, this was, I like to call it the Marvel Cinematic Universe endgame equivalent for Aeon's End, because it came after so much content was already available for the game, and yet this, I don't think there's ever been a card deck builder with as much content in one box. So many bosses, so many playable characters, so many different powers, a really great and very entertaining legacy campaign you can play through. But even if you don't care about that, once the campaign is done, you've still got more content in this box than most everything else on my shelf. You could play it a million different ways, a million different combinations of characters and bosses and markets that you're buying more cards from, and it never gets old. Such a brilliant design. The non-standard formula for how game structure works, driven by a turn order deck. Such a huge attention to detail, with players supplementing each other and helping each other every step of the way. Building up for huge, gratifying mega turns. Incredible variety for all the boss designs. I continue to this day to be blown away by all things Aeon End. But like I said, there's never been a bigger box full of card game content. Even if I don't get to shuffle any cards, that's okay. Number one on our combined list is Legacy of Gravehold for Aeon's End. But remember, folks, like I said, we're just getting started. Check out the extended. I got some more to talk about.
Okay, there it is. Number one. Chris, did Richard win you back with that one?
Oh, Richard's never left my heart. Richard deserves to be celebrated. Oh, there's the love flowing through the ether. We'll get the confetti going for Richard's beautiful choice. Yeah, it's a great pick. Aeon's End is awesome, and also like starting with a legacy version, I think is honestly one of the better ways to approach that. The first legacy is what I got into for Aeon's End, and they just build in all the little things that you need to know about your character, and it really provides it's how learning games want to be, I find, with the legacy. Or ever since after Legacy of Gravehold, they've had like 2 or 3 big boxes that you can have as starter sets, like the New Age or Outcasts. Both of those, I believe, have a little legacy system in them, and like Past and Future also have this like little legacy. They give you missions, they give you unlocks. So you get a boss, you get some new characters, you get some new like market cards, and it kind of simulates that legacy experience as well, in a way that isn't overwhelming, doesn't commit you to a campaign, and isn't a dumb family game for your first game before you get into the actual like real meat of it. It's just structured very well. So
nice.
Yeah, I will celebrate Richard.
All right.
Celebrate him to the moon.
Let's all celebrate Richard, shall we? Folks, that's going to do it for this episode of the R&R Show. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to click the link below for the extended edition, where we talk about a bunch more games. And until next time, we'll see you later here on the R&R Show. Take care. So long. Bye-bye.